Tip choice can be so important when you're feeder fishing. Ultimately, it's the tip that registers the bite. However, whilst we'd love to see as many bites as possible when we're feeder fishing, sometimes the conditions will determine what tip you can and can't use. Most rods come with a selection of tips, and in normal conditions we like to get away with a tip that is as light as possible. That just means that you're going to see as many indications as you can. However, in conditions like what we've got today, where it's quite windy, we are having to use a stronger tip for a couple of different reasons. Now, one of the questions I get asked a lot is, how do you determine what strength tip you're going to use on any given day? Now, one thing I will say is that when you look at the ounce ratings on certain tips, the actual strength of the tip can differ through different brands and different rods. That's one thing I will say. So you might find that a 2 ounce rod in one particular brand of rod might be a different strength from a 2 ounce tip for another brand. So whilst it is quite uniform, there are slight differences. Now, as a general guide, we use the lightest tip we can get away with. And so when you get to your peg, one of the first things that I will always do is I will get my rod out, clip a bomb on, and I'll cast a bomb out to the range that I expect to be fishing. By doing that, it just means that then I can put the rod down, put it on the rod rest, and while I'm sorting my side tray out, sorting my bait out, getting my nets out, I can keep looking at the tip. Now, that will tell me if the tip that I've got in the rod is actually strong enough for the conditions you're faced with. You might find it's a little bit too stiff, in which case it gives you time to change it before the start of your session or before the start of the match. On the flip side of that, you might find that there's a lot more toe than what you expected, and if that's the scenario that you're faced with, whilst you're setting up, when you look at your tip will be bent right round, and so that's telling you that it needs changing to a slightly stiffer tip. Now, there's a couple of reasons why you might also need a stiffer tip. One of them is to be able to punch a heavier feeder out into the reservoir. When it's windy like this, you tend to have to use heavier feeders than what you would do under normal calm conditions. So that means that when you are punching a feeder or casting a feeder really hard into a wind, you are obviously doing it faster, you're doing it with much more power, so therefore you need a slightly stiffer tip, because as you follow the cast through, if you've got a really soft tip, your tip's going to be going like this at high speed, and if you've got a shock leader on there as well, you're going to have a knot that's going through there really quickly, and so you'd really want to reduce that movement, because that can lead to crack-offs, and it can certainly lead to tip breakages, which is something that you want to avoid. So that is why you need a stiffer tip in those conditions. And the other reason why you need to change to a stiffer tip in these conditions is because of the toe. The further out you go, the more line or braid you've actually got out there submerged underneath the water. When you've got a wind like this, it's moving the top layers of the water one way, which therefore it means that the water has got to go the other way underneath, and that is what we refer to as toe. The more line and the more braid that you've got out there under the water, the more opportunities that water has got to grab onto your line, therefore increasing the pressure on your line or your braid, and that's what causes your tip to bend round because of that movement. So that is the other reason why you would need to step up to a stiffer tip. By casting your bomb out there before the start of the session, that's going to give you a head start. You don't want to wait while the start of the match, cast out your first cast and find out your tip's completely wrong, because one of two things is going to happen. One is you're going to cast out, see that it's not right, and you're just going to continue to fish with it even though it's not right. And the other scenario is you're going to have to get off your box, strip your rig down and put another tip in, which means you're going to get some downtime there. So you want to be finding out if that tip's right or wrong before the start of the session. I hope this has shed a little bit of light on a subject that we get asked about all the time, and if you have found it useful, please give this video a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. And don't forget, if you're new to feeder fishing or if you want to up your game even more, don't forget we've got a full range of online fishing fast track courses that you can download at the onlinefishingcoach.com website.